Hi, Premier. Good to see you.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you making the time. I wanted to start off on the issue that, I know you guys were here to talk about healthcare, and a number of other things, but this carbon tax exemption that your province is benefiting from. I just wanted to be kind of clear on what your stance is. Other premiers are calling for it to be expanded to other heat sources. Are you supportive of that?
I am supportive of that. And I mean, look, here in Nova Scotia, we've been presenting reasoned, respectful arguments to the federal government for a couple of years now as to why the carbon tax is not effective in this province. So the move to do the carve out on home heating oil, that's a good first step. We wish they'd get rid of it altogether. But obviously in taking that first step, they've caused some anxiety across the country. And I agree with the premiers who are raising that, because all Canadians have to heat their home. Like, it's just a factor of living in this country. You have to heat your home when you live in Canada in the wintertime. So I think to just ignore that for the rest of the country is a little bit unfair to them.
What was the, tone and tenor of the conversation among the premiers on that? Like, did it take a while to come to an agreement, to say something about that, for example, in the communique, or was it quick and easy?
It was quick and easy. Yeah, I mean, everyone can see. I mean, look, nobody wants to take an issue like the carbon tax and create a national unity crisis. I mean, it's one country. It's a time when we need to be unified on this, and for me, and I would say it was quick and easy because a lot of premiers recognize that everybody's got to heat their home. So trying to make the carbon tax different in different parts of the country, it's just unfair.
And do you think that there is the possibility of a national unity crisis on this?
No, it's just a factor in an ongoing discussion, right? When you have different regional things, it's we have to make sure there are certain times when, even here locally, I mean, there are certain times when political parties can be at each other, but there are other times when they need to stand together. And I've actually been encouraging my opposition here in Nova Scotia for the last couple of years to. The whole carbon tax issue is one we should be unified on. We can have disagreements on all kinds of policy things, no shortage of that. But on the carbon tax, it's one that we should have been unified on from the beginning. So that on this issue around home heating, it was quick and it was easy because people could see it was unfair.
The argument underpinning the government's policy when it comes to the price on carbon is to incentivize a behavior away from things that emit a lot, right? You have seen up close the impacts of climate change
Absolutely.
In this province. How can you oppose that policy writ large when I know affordability is a concern, but affordability is also so much impacted by the impact of climate change?
Yeah, our climate is changing. Like, there's no question about that. Governments have a responsibility to protect the planet. Citizens have a responsibility. So there's a broad agreement on that. And certainly in Nova Scotia, a coastal province, we see the impacts of climate change. So we know that there are steps to be taken. But we've always argued that there are more effective ways to do it. The carbon tax is probably the least effective way to protect the planet.
How do you know that?
Well, we just know because if you think about a rural province like Nova Scotia, where we don't have a lot of public transit, people have to drive. You can make the price of gasoline as high as you want, but they have to drive. You're not putting your child on the back of your bicycle and pedaling off to hockey practice or dance practice. You're going to drive. And we've seen that actually since the carbon tax has come into effect here. The volumes of gasoline purchased in this province have not decreased. You can't modify that behavior. You have to drive. So let's look at other ways where we can support people. Maybe other types of investments. But the carbon tax on something like fuel or home heating oil, you can't. That's not a behavior you can modify.
But I think overall, like the goal over a long period of time is to modify the behavior when there are those alternatives available. I completely acknowledge that those alternatives are not readily available, particularly in rural parts of this country, but that's also why the rural rebate exists, a top up on the rebate that Canadians already get, and now it's being doubled, which affects a great portion of this province as well.
Yeah. It's, the rebate is part of the equation. I don't believe that this is a moneymaker for people. I still think that their outlays are much more significant, especially when you think of, the cost of everything's going up because everything's got to be moved around to stores and to, from where it's produced to where it's consumed ultimately. And there's all along the way those costs go up. So, look, I just think that it's a policy that I didn't believe would work. And I think what we've seen today, for whatever reason, whether it's somebody looking at the polls or whether it's somebody finally listening to the reasoned arguments, for whatever reason, I think the federal government has acknowledged that this policy is not perfect, and that's okay. No, rarely is a policy perfect off the hop, but you have to have the courage to keep moving. I encourage them to have the courage to keep moving.
The time limit that they've placed on the exemption is 3 years. They've also upped the incentive to convert to heat pumps. You're at somewhere around 37% in this province of the province, relying on heating oil as its primary source of heat. Do you anticipate you'll be able to get all of those Nova Scotians off of it in the 3 years?
We have ambitious goals. We have legislated targets for protecting the planet, really. So we're aggressive anyway. Whether we can, I don't think we can get them all off in 3 years, but we'll certainly try, because it's just, I mean, anyone who is facing this winter and thinking about how they're going to pay for heating their home, there's a lot of anxiety right now across the province, across the country. So the carbon tax carve-out right now will maybe mitigate a little bit of that anxiety, but the anxiety is still high.
Have you had any promises from the federal government or anyone associated with it that they might potentially go beyond those 3 years?
It's early days. I mean, I haven't had those discussions, but we just keep, I think what we just kind of keep going methodically and putting reasoned arguments forward. I mean, we put forward our whole energy plan with Minister Wilkinson, and we kept putting that forward on what's possible and the greening of the grid here. And ultimately got a receptive audience. So we'll continue to do that. We want to be respectful with the federal government, but we know we have to do work to show them why things are, and not just stamp our feet up and down. But we'll continue to do that work.
Just before I let you go, healthcare also being discussed here. I did want to ask you about something you said at the outset of the meeting, which is you wanted to see a little bit of a line drawn in the sand as to where provinces go to recruit. What was agreed to on that, and what's the impetus for you driving that conversation?
Yeah, so got a lot of discussion, because look, it's a big world, and there's lots of healthcare workers around the world who are properly credentialed and qualified, and they want to be in Canada. So just moving healthcare workers from one province to another doesn't solve the national issue we have. So we had a robust discussion about that, and I think where we landed was that post-secondary institutions are going to have job fairs, and provinces and companies and organizations are going to want to be represented at those job fairs. But to actually actively go and try to recruit healthcare workers that are engaged and working in a system somewhere else, leave that system to come to Nova Scotia, that's not something we're going to do. And there was broad agreement amongst the premiers on that point.
Was there? And is that actually going to, I guess what I'm wondering is, are they just saying it and then still going to do it? Because I'm thinking of some campaigns that I have in my travels over the last year that I've seen that are specifically aimed at just that, right?
Yeah, it'll be a work in progress, no doubt. And people are going to move. There'll be healthcare workers working in another part of the country that have some connection to Nova Scotia.
Yeah, like, can you really stop that from happening?
They're going to move. We want that mobility. They should have a right to do that. But for us as a province to go and actively stand outside of a healthcare facility somewhere else in the country and say, leave there, come to us, we're not going to do that. And
are you putting your province at a disadvantage, though, when 144,000 people as of October 1st still don't have a family doctor, by not engaging in that if other provinces continue to?
Well, we're hopeful that others won't. But look, we passed something in this province called the Patient Access to Care Act, and it's about common sense credentialing. It's about recognizing that the Philippines is an example where I was recently. There's lots of 120 million people in the Philippines, average age 24. A lot of them highly qualified, upwardly mobile, want to be part of what we have. Some of those will be healthcare professionals, so we'll recognize their training and credentials. So I think we can attract people to the country to help solve some of this. But we have to look at what's happening with travel nurses and locums, and there's lots of moving parts. But I think today was an initial discussion about how we're going to respectfully recruit.